Hi, welcome to lesson 4 of the Encore music notation software tutorial. In this lesson, I'm going to talk about some of the keyboard shortcuts that you'll find very useful when you are entering music onto the score. The first couple of things are really a review from an earlier lesson, and what I wanted to point out where the cursor is right now, it's looking at the arrow at the top on the toolbar here. So you've got the arrow, the eraser, and the pencil. The arrow has a shortcut, the eraser has a shortcut, and the pencil also has a shortcut. So for the arrow, you just use the letter A, and that actually toggles back and forth between the pencil and the arrow. So if you use A, it gives you the arrow. If you use P, it'll give you the pencil or the arrow. It'll just toggle back and forth. The eraser tool is, the shortcut for that is E. So you just hit the E and it gives you the eraser. And then you can use that to go down and erase a note if you needed to erase a note or a series of notes. If you need to go back to the arrow, then it's just A. The thing that I think you'll find the most useful in keyboard shortcuts is the shortcuts for the notes and the rests. So it turns out that the keyboard shortcuts equate to exactly what's going on in the notes. And if you look at the top part of where the notes menu is in the palette here, you'll see that the first one is a double whole note. Well, you can get that by pressing the 0 on the keyboard. So you see that it highlighted that, and also it gives you the indication of a double whole note there. Not very common to use that, but it is available. And then if you go through the rest of the numbers that are on the keyboard, you'll get to the other notes. So 1 is a whole note or a rest, depending if you have that set. 2 is a half note. 3 is a quarter note. 4 is eighth note. 5 is a 16th note. 6 is a 32nd note. 7 is a 64th note. And 8 is a 128th note. So those numbers can be very useful. They're all accessible either on the top part of the keyboard or on the numeric keypad. If you use the top part of the keyboard, the top row of keys, the shortcuts become very easy to get to with your left hand only. So if you're doing what I've been doing in this lesson, entering notes from the mouse, you'll be able to enter the notes on the mouse using your right hand and then use the keyboard shortcuts with your left hand to get things done. So I talked about notes and rests. I mentioned rests just a second ago. I wanted to talk to you about more how to select a rest. Well, you can certainly do it by just going to the palette and selecting a rest off of the palette. But you can also do it with a keyboard shortcut. So if you have a note selected, like a half note here, you can use the letter R on the keyboard to select the rest. And so you can see that it went from a note to a rest. R is a toggle switch, so if you press it, it goes back and forth between note and rest and note. So you can use that to go back and forth. Now, depending on the kind of notes that you have on your score, you can also use other keyboard shortcuts to make things happen that are on the palette. So if you want a sharp, the keyboard shortcut for that logically is S. So that gives you a sharp. If you want a flat, then it's F for flat. If you want a natural, then it's N, and you can do it that way. If you want to have a dotted note, you can either select it off of the palette or you can use D for dot. So that gives you the dotted note. If you want to have double sharps, double flats, double dots, then you can use the Shift key with those. So Shift and S gives you a double sharp. Shift and F gives you a double flat. Shift and D gives you a double dot. So all of those things are available through very straightforward keyboard shortcuts. And the last one is the letter T. And you can see what happened when I press the T. It lit up the bottom one. This is where you can get quintuplets, triplets, any kind of tuplet that's possible. And I'll talk more about that later to go through and describe what's happening with those. So anyway, these are probably the most common keyboard shortcuts, the things you can use with the notes palette. And so I wanted to explain those to you. We'll cover more in future lessons. If you want to learn more about the future lessons, you can look at my website, which is listed here. If you want to know more about Encore, you can go to the Passport Music software site, which is also listed here. We'll see you in the next lesson.